Hi guys. So today I'm going to be talking about the collision of video and interaction, which is really a way of saying, talking about where video is at now and where we see things going in the future. There's a lot of possibilities, and not all of them are going to be right, but there's ways that we can talk about these aspects and understand what's coming down the road and why it's important. One of the things that we think about whenever we hear video or augmented reality, virtual reality, which I'll go into those definitions later, we think about video games, we think about movies, we think about cinema, but the thing that I really want to talk about is how these things all come together, and they're really they're building this path towards an immersive shared reality. We'll talk about ways that I think that may be coming true, and we'll talk about how AI and machine learning are going to be foundational for this version of what I'm talking about, and then we'll also discuss the middle ground between active and passive video, which I think video games is one great example of that. But we'll go into a few others. We'll talk about streaming video and interaction and why that's important. And then we'll discuss the path that lies ahead in the attention competition industry. That's really relevant in whenever you think about why social media is important, why advertising in all things is important, what it means to take a video course just like this one at a university. And I particularly want to focus about how these broad advances in technology will eventually transform educational environments, as along the way they're going to be transforming cinema, video games, social media, etc. So we can get started. I'll do a quick introduction about myself, and then we'll carry on. So hi, my name is Travis Rice. I'm University of New South Wales Senior Manager for Multimedia and Immersive Technology, which is a mouthful, and basically it describes a lot of the work that I do day to day is looking at the strategy and direction of the university's video, particularly around classroom teaching, the in-class projections. All of those things are part of my remit, but the main focus is really looking at the horizon and what's just beyond the horizon, and how does that technology, how does that social direction feed back into the classroom, and why. So my background is I've worked quite a long time in the contemporary art museum field. I've worked in museums and galleries in contemporary art, primarily working with artists. I've worked with the Biennale of Sydney here in Sydney. I've also worked with Apple just before the iPhone came out, and Blizzard, working on World of Warcraft. My job there was trying to understand how virtual communities could be formed, and how artists would engage with those virtual communities. So I'm really working between the cultural museum concept sector and the high-tech idea sector. So about 7 years ago, I formed my own company with a friend of mine, and we had a significant virtual reality company called Lens Immersive. We started that here in Sydney. We grew into Canada, and then we grew into China, and we had offices in those spaces, and those projects were really looking at what is the future, and it's just one of the things that we look at and talk about today. So I'm really happy to be able to discuss this with you today, and I'd be really happy to hear your questions at the end of it. So we'll start talking about device divergence, which I think is really relevant now, and why. We'll see. So does anyone remember any of these devices? Maybe some of you guys have got them. You may be watching this course at home, and maybe you've got a couple of these in your desk, or maybe one of these things sitting in your cabinets. These devices could all do specific things extremely well. They did photos, maybe photos and videos for a point and shoot camera, and then looking at the iPod, this really revolutionized music, but it didn't take photos, it didn't make phone calls. Palm Pilot and Razer, those were huge in the US, and those really they owned their categories. I think that one of the things that we saw with these pieces of specialized technologies was that they could do things extremely well, and then in an individual way. So that was 2006. Obviously things have changed. We've moved on quite a bit, and now we've got a very different era. We've got the era of basically Project Purple, which I didn't realize until recently, but this was Steve Jobs' code name for the iPhone. So I'd be willing to bet that each of you guys has one of these within reach, maybe not an iPhone, but an Android device or a Samsung or a tablet or some kind of digital connectivity tool. So these are ubiquitous, and they're unified. So it's taking each of those point and shoot cameras, taking the MP3 player, it's taking the Palm Pilot for scheduling, and the Razer for making phone calls. It's taking all those things and wedging them into one. So it's become a unified tool, and so this is a generalist tool, and it is something that we use to educate, entertain, to work, to connect, and it really has become the do everything device. This is today's compute platform. Later on, I'll be talking a little bit more detail about where I see some of these new technologies going, but this is a foundational new technology that really has changed the way that people perceive video and perceive their interactions with video, and this is why I bring this up. It is a changing landscape, and social media, point and shoot photography, iPhone photography, Google Maps, all of these things are part of the language that we live in and interact in now. So you guys all know what this is, so I'm happy to carry on, and then we'll carry on with a little discussion about how I feel like this device actually does have limitations. So as you can see, I mean, it's a small device, and it is it's like even a big tablet or even just a projector on the wall. These are windows into the digital world. They're not a doorway. We're looking into the digital space. We're looking into an idea that is represented digitally. So this is just a glimpse. It's not something that we can interact with yet. So this is not a doorway. And I think I've said that before, but I think it's worth reiterating, as well as on this slide. The reason I bring up doorway, we're going to get into shortly whenever I talk about immersive experiences. But it is important to remember that we can only passively consume from this piece of content, from this piece of hardware. It's only coming out to us. There's an inherent passiveness and inefficiency in that, and there's a lack of immersion. Even whenever you have something like Pokemon Go, or even these virtual reality experiences where you put this into a cardboard device, that's not an immersive experience in the context of how does it affect me. I'm still just watching something. So that is something that we see as being video. It's a disembodied interaction. There's no connection to you. The reason, again, I bring this up is we're starting to see silos, just like we were talking about with the point and shoot and the iPod. These silos are taking a different form, whereas before they were physical, and now they are becoming digital silos. We're seeing apps, like the calendar app or the camera app. These are standalone and discrete, siloed experiences within the phone. They're something like Microsoft Teams starts to combine a few of these things together, or WeChat. It's an incredible tool at combining many different things together, but they are still silos. So these silos, they're individual discrete experiences, and that contributes to the lack of immersion, that lack of being able to cross over and do multiple things. I want to mention this because one of the things that we can do is we can be talking and engaging on video at the same time as we're drinking a bottle of water. We can be walking down the street and talking on a phone call. We can be doing multiple things at the same time. These siloed experiences are not intuitive, and it's not the way that we see the world. It is the way that device programmers and hardware manufacturers see the world. So I want to go on and talk a little bit about these separate experiences and what these look like. These are separate spaces. One of the things, we've got the social media, we've got a work desktop monitor, we've got video gaming, iPhone, and a virtual reality headset here. Each one of these is a discrete, separate experience. Some of these do start to cross over a little bit. Obviously, you can play games on your phone and on your computer, as well as a VR headset. And you can engage in a video call or an audio call on your game device. Those types of things, but they're not. They're still discrete experiences, and the main thing is that this silo carries through. Don't want to get too hung up on the silo things, but I do think it's important to talk about the crossover between these spaces. Is primarily 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, sometimes 1-to-many, but those are more rare. I think Fortnite is a good example, or a Zoom call that's broadcasting out to many people. That's a good example. But the main thing is that these are all screen-based. These are all screen-based because they are, they're looking at ways to interact are as far as through screens, and they're not actually bridging that interaction point. We're looking at this window, and it's still a primarily one-way window. And I know what you're saying, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality can do all of those things. Later on in this video, I'll talk about what the differences are between virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. I think it is critically important, but I do want to lump them all together for this part of the conversation, because primarily the experiences that happen in VR, AR, and MR, those are primarily pockets of experience, and those are a marketing or a piece of gaming, a piece of training software. Sometimes they're standalone, and sometimes they're quite gimmicky. But I think that the core of this experience of VR, AR, and MR is that it does begin to engage this interactivity, this interactive experience. So that interactivity is what I see as critical for the growth of these technologies, and I see it as critical for the growth of screen-based technologies. Right now, we've had 100 years of screens telling us a story, speaking out to us. We've had audio recordings. We've had amazing cinema history that tells a story. And even a situation like this, where this is a class that's delivered online via a learning platform, that is a one-way path, and that's from me to you, and it's not a dialogue. It is not interactive. You can't reach out and slap me or punch me. You can't begin to engage with the things that I'm showing you and talking to you about, other than on the cerebral level. So I want to go a little bit further and talk a little bit more deeply around video and why I think it is important in this dialogue. So this is what I'm heralding as one of the problems of video, which video is static. It can't really change and grow. The main thing we see on screens is video. We're surrounded by screens, iPhones, cinemas, projectors, etc. There's this 100 years that I was talking about, this 100 years of video content. The growth curve on the production of it is phenomenal. There's an amazing rise of streaming media content, and I know you guys have seen it. Netflix, Paramount, Apple TV. There's so many different streaming companies, and again, these are siloed entities. But this rise of streaming media, Hulu, Youku, TikTok, Douyin, the way these things work is, it's based on us watching. And these, the watching that we're doing, it is one way, and that is part of that concept of the consumer in this context, which video is primarily driving us to be a consumer and not an engager. And I'll just talk a little bit about that with some statistics. The stats that I've read, 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. 500 hours. And then collectively, globally, we watch over 1 billion hours of YouTube videos a day.